let's finish off Summer League by talking about the Pacific Division. Bronny James, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Kings, and the Suns. And Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and fantasy managers hate this one simple trick. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we're double banging every day. So do it. Thumb it up, comment, subscribe, tune in every day. There's always a show going on. I think you're well aware of that by now. So this wraps up our Summer League recap coverage, and then tomorrow we move into the Dynasty Rookie re-ranks, and there will be some movement. Not sure how deep we'll take that out. Actually, that's a good idea. If you are watching/listening to this, and your Dynasty Rookie draft has happened, or more importantly is coming up, how many players get picked? There are some that do like 24, which is a ridiculously small amount. There are some that will go 60. Does anyone go higher than that? I do want to know. So let me know down in the comments where you are at and how many picks actually go in your Dynasty Rookie draft. Like I said, that's the wrong button. It's not the Atlantic Division, but you know what? I'm not going to go and change that because we're talking about the Pacific Division. A Summer League Pacific Division recap. And we know that there are the 5 teams there. And we'll start with the alphabetically, as we've done in all these shows, by talking about the Golden State Warriors, who didn't have a high pick in this year's draft, but had a couple of interesting rookies last season. Obviously, they're undergoing a slight transition with some of the players moving on. Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, of course. One of the guys who was a standout, struggled a bit in Summer League with his numbers last season, but this season, Brandon Podziemski was exactly what you wanted. For a guy that was a starter as a rookie, and he was pretty good last season, and I think that there is a pretty sizable chance he's a starter this season. He was great. 12th best player for fantasy in Summer League, averaged 34 fantasy points. He averaged 17, 7, and almost 6 assists with 1.3 steals. He shot 40% from 3. He actually hit his free throws, which was a big problem for him last season as well, and almost 3 triples a game. Like, if he approaches this, and he probably won't because your 26 usage is not likely, that's a very, very clear top 100 player. The problem is they also brought in DeAnthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins and John Kuminga are still there. They signed Buddy Hield. I would hope that they are valuing Podziemski enough, if he stays on the team, remember the Larry Markkinen trade might happen, but if Podziemski stays on the team, that they would say, yeah, he's a guy we actually need there to start. Hield and Melton, as much as we might like either of those players for certain reasons, Podziemski's one of their future pieces here. So we do need to watch how they would run those 3 guards outside of Steph. I think Podziemski is going to be draftable, and he did literally everything that you would want him to do through the couple of Summer League games that he played. And that's what you wanted. If the free throw shooting and the 3-point shooting becomes real, and then we're really cooking with some really big numbers. So he had awesome fantasy translation numbers even before his rookie season coming out of college. And he flashed quite a bit of that last season. And now there is a big opportunity for growth for Brandon Podziemski. Who else was on this squad? Well, there were players that you've heard of. Old mate, the Fort, Kevin Knox II, was on this team. He has been on every team in the league, apparently. He's only still 25. Cool. He averaged 16 and 7. He shot the ball well. He feels like he's going to get a chance on so many tanking teams and then not really cut out for the NBA as a general rule, but this is harkening back to MVP, Summer League MVP, Kevin Knox. Of course, I never really bought that at the time. I didn't expect him to turn out to be this bad, but he's really struggled. Shout out to David Fizdale. Trace Jackson-Davis is the other really interesting player on this squad. Jackson-Davis only played the 3 games, much like Podziemski. He played 25 minutes a night, but he was averaging 27 fantasy points through that time. He had 13 and 8. He didn't block shots, which is one of the big strengths he had last season. One of the issues he had was he didn't hit free throws, and he hit them here. 74%, 63 from the line. Again, really small sample size. The Warriors' rotation remains clustery. Who do they start at center? Is it Draymond? Because that would enable them to play Kuminga and Wiggins at the 3 and the 4. And then Steph / Melton, Hield, Podziemski at the 2. Or do they go to a more traditional type of center, even though Jackson Davis isn't super tall? But does he start next to Draymond? And then you make a choice between Wiggins and Kuminga? Or do you, God forbid, play Wiggins at the 2 and then mean Melton, Hield, and Podziemski all come off the bench? It all seems weird. This rotation is a little overloaded. If Jackson Davis is even close to starting, we draft him. 24 minutes, we draft him. 27, easy top 80 player probably. And he did sort of what we needed him to do. Their only draft pick this year was Quentin Post. He's a 24-year-old big man. He only played 15 minutes. He had 10 points. He shot 64%, 40% from 3. But he's on a 2-way, and he's just not going to play early on. I think there is a chance he gets converted to a full-time contract later on in the season. He's an interesting player from Boston College. Nothing here suggests that we need to get our hopes super high, though. Pat Spencer, who is Cam Spencer's brother from the Grizzlies, he was on a 2-way, signed midway through last season on a 2-way. He's already 28, but he put up some okay numbers, 15 points with almost 7 assists. Don't expect, with all those guards that I've been mentioning ad nauseum here on the Warriors, I don't expect Pat Spencer is going to be putting up big numbers. And then the other one is their new 2-way signing, Reese Beekman from Virginia, a really solid defensive player. He had a block a game and half a steal a game in his 22 minutes, but the shooting is probably a concern. Even though he hit 67% from 3, the volume was so low that his overall field goal percentage was 31, because what is his 2s? 20%. Again, a 2-way guard along with Spencer, along with Post. They're 3 2-way guys. I don't expect much out of these players, and nothing that I saw here from these guys makes me go, yeah, like they've uncovered gigantic gems from the 2-way market, and it's going to like lead into huge production. They were fine, but the big story was the Podziemski and Jackson Davis look great, and they're ready for big enough roles that we have to be considering them. Let's take a look at the next team, which is the LA Clippers. Their team is very, very clearly in a weird state of flux heading into this season. They didn't have a first-round pick in the draft. I liked what they did with their second-round pick, but they also had really one of the more surprising Summer League performances. And you hear me and many other people talk about, as a second-year player, it's a bit of a red flag if you don't dominate. If you do dominate, it's a good sign, but it's sort of what you should do. But I wasn't sitting here thinking that Jordan Miller, a second-round pick from last season, who was on a 2-way, who just barely saw play, would come out and cook the way that he did. But he was great. Like, that was when on that first game, which I didn't actually see in person, when he went out there, there was like whispers going, oh man, Jordan Miller just scored 30 points? I go, what? Really? Yeah, and he did. He averaged 25 points on 30 usage across Summer League. He played 5 games. He averaged 25 points a game. 2.5 threes. 4 rebounds. Of course, it's fake because he shot 60% from 3 and 55% overall. Maybe he can be a 40% shooter, but obviously with Paul George leaving and Kawhi's health in question, there are potentially wing minutes available. He's still just a 2-way guy, I believe. I don't think there's been any conversion happening there. But that is way better than the alternative of him not hitting shots and struggling through Summer League and taking on this large usage role and turning it into big numbers. Again, context is important because the team has no prospects. There was no one on this team. So he had to step up, and he did. Doesn't mean that this is, wow, we've got a new wing star coming along. But doing what you need to do at the time that you do it is key. And I thought that was really impressive. He was the 9th best fantasy player through Summer League and averaged 39 fantasy points, making him the 7th best points league guy in those 28 minutes. So it's really, really impressive to see him do that. We do an eyebrow raise at Jordan Miller and go, maybe? But we don't get too excited about it. But it is something. Like, it's better than the alternative, which was being bad. It's better than being Ochai Agbaji. Sorry to Ochai. The rest of this team, there's just not a lot going on. Moussa Diabate, who I don't even think remains on the roster, played on their 2-way team, on their Summer League team. He had 12-7. Didn't block any shots. He had elite efficiency numbers, but, like, who cares? Like, he's just had some opportunities in the past and it's never really come to anything. I don't really care that much. The player who is new is Cam Christie, Max Christie's brother. 2nd-round pick, really young, just turned 19. Played 26 minutes, 11 points with 3 triples. Shot, 40% from 3. He averaged a steal. He's sort of in that Keyshawn George class from Washington, in that he's a shooter. He's not quite as big as George, but I think he's going to turn into a better player. I don't think that he's going to play a huge amount this season, but as a shooting guard, small forward type player, Cam Christie, and with the future of like Norman Powell, like who knows where he's going to be? What the hell is happening with Kawhi? They lost Russell Westbrook and Chris Dunn comes in, but like Christie might actually be like a 12, 13 minute a night rotation guy for 50, 60 games this season. And I do think that there is a starting level player somewhere in there. And what he did at Summer League didn't blow us away, but for the number 46 overall pick, I think it's sort of impressive. Kobe Brown was their first round pick the year before. He had this really interesting game at Missouri, was able to do a lot of different stuff. And he had, I think, had some big Summer League games last season, but it was in that similar mold of like, yeah, who else is on the team? And it's sort of the same story here. Him and Miller are both 24 and a half years old. 17 points for Brown with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. He shot 49 and 78. That's all solid. He had, 25 usage? With, again, no Paul George on this team, and they replace him with Derek Jones. They still do need, and PJ Tucker's cooked clearly, there is still a need for someone to play at the 4. I don't think that we're in a spot where we're going to be seeing old mate Kobe Brown be a starter and play big minutes or anything along those lines. But if something goes completely wrong, and that's a distinct possibility, and Nick Batum's a million years old, and as they make transitions into different sort of roles, Brown has got at least a stat set. I don't think he's a long-term starter on a good team or anything like that. But it's interesting. One thing I forgot to mention with Cam Christie, though, and Jordan Miller, is they did sign Kevin Porter Jr., it keeps slipping my mind. So he's going to get those minutes, so that limits some of their stuff. And their backup center, there's Mo Bamba, there's Kai Jones, but there's a bunch of guys who just you go, who are these guys? Is there anything interesting with them? And a lot of the time, the answer to all that, I think, is no. But Christie flashed a bit. Jordan Miller was great. Kobe Brown did what he needed to do. And at least it's something there to become, I think, at least future rotation players. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Game Time is now an official ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, meaning when you want to go out to the old ballpark, get some Cracker Jacks, hot dogs, beers, ice creams in souvenir helmets, well, Game Time can help you there because they are the app you want to go to for tickets. So many different features. Flash deals. Bang. Something's happening at the moment, they'll tell you about it. All in pricing. Don't worry about hidden fees. They just tell you the price. Hey, this ticket's $50. You go, okay, well, I guess that means it's going to be $67 with a 7.5% garbage fee. No, it's just the price. It's there. Views from your seat. What am I going to see when I'm sitting here? Bang, there it is. It's all there. Game Time has everything you would want. So, across the summer, when you're looking to take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a $20 off your first purchase. Download the app, create the account, use the code LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today, last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. All right, so that is 2 teams done. Let's go on to the biggest team, the name brand team. That is the Los Angeles Lakers. Who, I don't really know what the hell's going on with this team. What I do know is I'm pretty sure Rob Pelinka's not cut out to be a GM, but he's in that job still. They have another new head coach in JJ Redick. Don't know whether he's going to be good or not. Literally no way of knowing that. But they've made 0 moves. They haven't done anything to improve their roster, and I think that is 2 years in a row that they have gotten worse. And then you see their Summer League team, and it was some okay-ish moments, but nothing that blew me away. Let's start with their first-round selection, Dalton Knecht. And you know that he's been the butt of many of my jokes because there were people that thought he was a guaranteed top 10 pick, a top 5 pick, the best shooter in the class. And I was just like, no. I think he's around 20th. He's old. He scored well as an old man beating up on kids. He does have some athleticism. He's a little small for what I would hope he could be. And I'm not convinced that he's a good shooter. I wouldn't say that his Summer League was bad. I'd say that his Summer League was fine. 18 points, 5 rebounds, 2 threes, 1.5 steals. 27 usage, shot 34% from 3. Only 37 overall from the field, but whatever. It was fine. He averaged 31 fantasy points. He was the 66th ranked player in -1. He played 29 minutes a game. But absolutely nothing that happened from watching Dalton Knecht play made me change my opinion on him as a prospect. He shot fine. He didn't shoot awesome. And again, shooting percentages don't carry over. But, what else was he doing if he's not a usage scorer? Was his passing okay? It was okay. Was his defense good? Not really, but there were some occasional flashes. He didn't rebound the ball particularly well. He's not going to start for this Lakers team. He probably has a rotation role, but I'm going to guess, given they extended Max Christie, that Christie gets a shot at that role first. And yeah, there are going to be injuries, and this team's going to turn things over eventually at some point in the future. I just don't see Connect as a well-rounded sort of a player. And I think him going at 17 is a totally reasonable spot in the draft, and nothing that I saw in Summer League suggests that that is the steal of the draft or that was going to make every other team regret on it. I didn't say that. I thought that he should have been in that zone. He was picked in that zone. He sort of did the things that I thought would happen. He looked totally reasonable as a solid rotation piece, and I think he'll get solid enough rotation minutes this season with some struggles mixed in. And that's basically what we saw. Let's talk about the rest of their players. Maxwell Lewis, not to be confused with Max Stevens. Who the hell's Max Stevens? Max Christie. Second-year player, Maxwell Lewis. He had a few moments when you go, oh, he was that. And then he goes, Maxwell Lewis. Okay, he's showing a little bit here. But still, like, 9 points in 23 minutes, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Didn't shoot well. May have been a waste of a second-round pick a year ago, but it is a second-round pick, so it doesn't matter that much. He had a couple of flash moments, but overall, as a second-year guy, we just talked about Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown and how they showed out. Again, the team construction's different. But Lewis didn't make me go, yeah, we've got a rotation player here. And that brings us to Bronny James. LeBron James Jr. He averaged 17 fantasy points. He had 17% usage. Bronny played, 25 minutes a game. And he shot horribly. 13%. 13% from 3. 63 from the line. 33 from the field. That's all terrible. He averaged a steal and 0.8 blocks. That's good. And the thing with Bronny is that he was considered a very high level prospect. You could say that that's inflated by his name. Of course, absolutely. But he wasn't a bum. He had the heart attack issue, obviously, last season. He had some really bad numbers at USC. Not the worst player to get drafted. Not the worst numbers for a player to get drafted this year, or even, Peyton Watson had worse numbers coming out of UCLA as well. Bronny showed, I think, the things that I thought that he can bring. Defense. Smart feel for the game. He knows how to defend. He gets in passing lanes. He can provide good on-ball pressure. The shooting is bad, and I'm not sure it's ever going to be good. He's not the passer that his dad is. Of course he's not. He's not his dad. That's cool. Will Bronny ever be an NBA starter? I really, really doubt it. Will Bronny ever be a rotation player? Maybe. That's quite possible. My thing for him had always been best case is maybe Patrick Beverley. But maybe he never gets there. He had a few early moments in this game, and we know he had that ridiculous streak of not hitting a 3. And was he over 15 or whatever it was for a period of time? But in the end, he averaged half a 3 a game and 7 points and a steal and 0.8 blocks. And the defensive part of his game was, I think, as advertised. The guy that I thought could have been in the mix even for backup center minutes last season was the big fella Colin Castleton. He's still on a 2-way deal. And Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes are the guys getting backup minutes. Castleton's better than both of those players, I think. And he showed it here as a second-year guy. He's already 24, but 11 and 9, 3 assists, a block, 53, 86, and 50% from 3. These are the sort of numbers that he put together coming out of Florida as well. And he's still on a 2-way. I would love for them to find a way to get him onto the roster because, again, Hayes and Wood are not it. And the only reason Hayes and Wood are there is because bad GMing from Pelinka the year before. So signing Wood with a player option was literally insanity considering nobody wanted to sign him. Why would you do that? Anyway, that's beyond the point. Shout out to Dario Saric. But Castleton's just never going to be, I don't think, a starter player. But if we talk about these random guys with the interesting advanced numbers who put up numbers whenever they seem to play, one of those guys just got signed for $87 million by the Oklahoma City Thunder, Isaiah Hartenstein. To be clear, Hartenstein was always a better stat-translated player than what Castleton was. But Hartenstein was a player that no one ever thought about as a second-round pick who barely played in Houston his first season and had some interesting G League games. So Castleton is just a name that you just keep in your mind, especially when the path to those backup minutes is not blocked by prospects or even anywhere near competent NBA players. And he did what he needed to do, and as a 2-way guy, great. There are other 2-way players, Blake Hinson and Arnel Traore. Blake Hinson, not going to be afraid to shoot at all. He hit 2.5 threes a game in his 21 minutes. Hit him at 33%. That level of at least volume shooting can be really useful. And it's not like this team is flush with elite shooters everywhere. He's not going to play a huge amount, obviously. The other guy is Amal Traore, who I did like as a prospect. I wouldn't say that what he did in the Summer League was super impressive. There's other guys like Moses Brown somehow was on this team, Vincent Valeria Bodon. They are Hungarian legend who, I think maybe could be an NBA player, but didn't really stand out that much. But that's Trent Forrest played on this team. But there was some Sean East as well. No one really stood out there. I thought Hinson's shooting was the most interesting out of most of those, most interesting skill set out of those two-way guys outside of Castleton and those undrafted guys with a little bit of pedigree. But interesting stuff, probably not going to translate into much. We've got 2 teams left. That's what happens when you go through 3 teams. So let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. And these 2 teams, I'm not going to lie to you, there's not a lot going on. Prospect-wise or from Summer League performances. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you the key to everything is happening here because it's not. Let's talk about the Suns, though, because in the first round, they did select Ryan Dunn. We had significant concerns about Dunn's offense. And, he shot under 8% from 3. 34% overall on 15 usage. He did have 1.5 blocks. He did have 1.3 steals. He scored 6 points a game. He was averaging 20 fantasy points, 162nd. He played 25 minutes. The complete lack of any offensive ability and being a little bit undersized to play as a center. He's like a center in a small forward's body. It makes the fit really weird. Now, of course, when you've got Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen all surrounding him, maybe you get away with that. But I think overall, this complete... we talk Matisse Thybulle, and Matisse Thybulle looks at him and goes, I'm Steph Curry compared to you, mate. The Dunn stuff is really... The offense, I think, is going to cause a real problem, and the defense is absolutely elite. And when you watched him play, nothing really changed my mind there. Don't think there's going to be any real impact for him fantasy-wise, and it's always going to be this struggle to go, well, if only he can shoot. And maybe he can at some point. It's coming from almost as far back as anybody in the NBA, though, to get to that level. So I don't think we're going to see that. The rest of their team, old mate David Roddy was on this squad. That's third-year David Roddy, who came across from Memphis at the trade deadline and did nothing. To David Roddy's credit, as a third-year player, he's 23 years of age. He had 15, 6, and 2 in those 26 minutes. He shot 37% from 3. Good, Dave. I wanted you to do that. But he's in that mix with the guys like Dunn and guys like Okogie as these defensive-bodied... Big body Roddy, obviously, that's what people call him. He's terrible. We know this. He's super soldier serum Tyus Jones. He is just never going to be a impactful NBA player. I'm never going to rely upon his shot. I just don't know what he does good at an NBA level. Again, good to see him put up solid numbers in a situation where he should, but that's it. Osa Ighodaro was their second-round pick, a very athletic, a little bit older, undersized center. 25.5 fantasy points, 86th overall for rankings-wise for categories, 7 and 6 with over a steal, over a block, and 4 assists. He is a good passer. He's I liken him a little bit to an Eve Missy, not as big, but a better passer. And he flashed all that stuff. At the moment, we're talking the cockroach Mason Plumlee as the backup to Yusuf Nurkic, and Bol still there. So Ighodaro is probably not going to do a huge amount. But I thought he sort of did enough to be a guy that will have a little bit of intrigue at times throughout his career. The other guy is Jalen Bridges, someone who fell through the draft. Again, I do think that was deliberate for his agent and him to get directed to a team where he wanted to go in a two-way. And this happens a lot. I thought about this a lot this morning because what else have I got going on in my life? I thought about it a lot. And I think that it's this thing that we see happen, and we saw it happen with Bridges, we saw it happen with Trey Alexander, PJ Hall as well in Denver. And I do think that it might be a slightly flawed idea from the agents, because what I think I've been seeing, and maybe this is because I haven't studied this. Maybe this is just a level of bias from me, that when teams, they direct them not to draft them in the second round and they sign a two-way with this particular team because the opportunity is good, but I still find that teams will prioritize the guys that they drafted and then the guys that they signed using that second round exemption to a 2-3 year deal with non-guarantees. They still seem to prioritize those players over anyone undrafted. maybe that's crazy of me. But like Bridges, who like the priority for him apparently was going here and not getting drafted anywhere else and being a two-way guy. Also, Iguodala was picked at 40, played 26 minutes. Jalen Bridges played 18. Ryan Dunn played 25. Like, that's not the be-all and end-all, but it seems to happen across a number of these ones, that these guys who sign in as undrafted players don't always... the team, we think that the teams have treated, well, we thought you were a really high second-round pick, but we wanted you to come here and you maneuvered to get here, and then they don't treat them that way. I would like to see some of these guys getting, diverted out of second-round picks. And if they're going to sign with this team that supposedly want them and favors and age, all that sort of stuff, the team goes, yeah, okay, cool. Here's 4 years, $10 million, 3 years guaranteed. That's how much we value you. Not like, we'll have a two-way. Because, I don't know. Bridges, I think he's going to be good. 11 points, 3 threes, steal a game, 40% from 3. Like, literally everything is advertised, and played 17 minutes. So I just wish there was a little bit more marrying up of like, hey, we feel like you're a priority, but why aren't we playing you like who... It's very easy, I think, to look at this and go, yeah, Jalen Bridges is the best prospect on this team. I think that is an easy thing for an outsider to look at and see, yet he plays under 18 minutes. That's a little annoying to me. He only averaged 19 fantasy points on 176th ranked in Yahoo, which that's not awesome. But again, he only played 18 minutes. So I don't know. That's just something that's floating around the old noggin at the moment. If your name is not Jones, don't even bother going to the Sacramento Kings, because that's apparently all they want. Well, that's not true, because they've got 2 guys with the surname of Ellis as well. And one of them was Keon. And he's their best performer, and the guy that's going to have the best chance of having any sort of value. Will he be their starter this season? I guess so, because obviously your DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray are the 3-4, Fox is the 1. I guess they could go back to Kevin Huerter, but they won't. I'm guessing that Keon starts at the 2. Malik Monk off the bench. Ellis had some really strong defensive moments last season. He had some good shooting numbers. And he was one of those undrafted players who worked his way from a 2A into a full-time contract. 13 points, 5 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 22 usage, shot 32 from 3. We saw this last season. Steals and blocks as a guard, one of the best out there. He's decent size. I think he's 6'5 or 6'6. And that low usage player, he's only 22 usage here on a team with no real prospects, shows again that he probably doesn't have any ability to ramp that stuff up. But that defensive ability, when you're looking for steals in a fantasy format, like if he's playing 27 minutes, there'll be days where he gets 4 or 5 pretty easily, but there'll be nights where he goes 1 of 9. And we know the Mike Brown story is that if you start off as a not established star, if you're not an all-star and you miss your first 2 or 3 shots, well, you will play 15 minutes. And if you hit your first couple of shots, you will play 35. That is generally how Brownie tends to work that. Ellis averaged 30 fantasy points a game. He was 28th in -1. He played 32 minutes, and he did literally what we wanted him to do. If you were a Kings fan, to go, let's see Keon Ellis look the part and pass and get the defensive stuff going, and you'd be really happy with those results. And then that's where we get into the Jones situation, because there are 3 blokes on this summer league team who are all on the Kings regular season roster, and their surname is Jones. Again, I did say that we had 2 Ellises because there was a Boogie Ellis playing as well from USC, who was not too bad. But let's talk about the Joneses. Colby Jones was the first guy down. Colby Jones was on this squad last season. We didn't really get to see him, and I'm not really sure we're going to see him here. In terms of he is the only one out of those Joneses who's on a true full NBA contract. And his numbers across the summer league were pretty good. He averaged 10 points in 24 minutes, 1.6 steals. The shooting numbers were pretty bad. And not the standout you'd want from a second-year guy, but okay. Isaiah Crawford was an undrafted player who signed with a 2-way, a lot of knee injuries in his history. He didn't do a huge amount here, really sort of low usage, 13%. Shot 60% on threes, but that's low volume there. One of the appeals of him was rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. It didn't really come through here in Summer League. He only played 17 minutes. He had 0.4 steals and 0.2 blocks. Only 1.6 rebounds. It's a long path for Crawford from that position at age 23, undrafted, 2-way guy. But there's a history because the guy in front of him, Keon Ellis, can do it. Now, Crawford probably profiles more as a 3 versus a point guard in the NBA. But nothing there really stood out. And then there's the other Joneses. Mason Jones was the best Jones. 31 fantasy points, 34th on Yahoo rankings points, and 22nd in -1. He averaged almost 6 assists, almost 6 rebounds, and 2 steals. Mason Jones has bounced around. I think he was in Houston for a period of time and a little bit in Philadelphia. He said maybe like been in an NBA system. I think it's 3 years now. Maybe I'm just going to look that up. I don't want to lead you too far astray. But he's 26 now, Mason Jones. He played 27 minutes with those really strong numbers. He shot his free throws well. Is he the best Jones out of this group? I'm not sure. He was with the Rockets, then he was with the Sixers, then he was with the Lakers as a camp deal. Then he was with the Kings, and that's where we are now. The other one, who's a rookie this year, is Isaac Jones, who's signed to a 2-way. He played 29 minutes a game, 11 and 6, shot 22% from 3, 25 years old already. Fine, but I'm not that excited about any of the Joneses. Crawford was the guy I was interested in coming out of the draft, but he didn't really show much. And overall, this is one of the more boring teams from a prospect perspective. And speaking of a prospect perspective, that is it for my Summer League recap. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up on these videos, all 6 of them. And then tomorrow, Dynasty Rookie re-ranks. But I do want to hear how deep your Dynasty Rookie goes. Not how deep he goes, or how he can go as deep as he wants. How deep your Dynasty Rookie draft goes. Let me know about that as well. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.